Man, what's up? Welcome in, everybody. It is GC Live. Wes Mitchell here. Chris Clark, Monday episode of the show. As my buddy Joe, who is a listener to the show, texted me on Saturday night, back to reality for Gamecock fans. Last week was fun. Great victory over Florida. And as we talked about all week, Chris, opportunity for South Carolina, winnable game for South Carolina on paper, proved to really be a winnable game in reality as well. That's kind of the way it played out. We're going to dive into why it was ultimately not a win for South Carolina, but in a lot of ways, I wouldn't say there were a ton of surprises with this game. The concerns that you would have on paper with how it may not play out in South Carolina's favor. Unfortunately for Gamecock fans, those concerns were probably validated. And so we're going to get into the game, of course, today. We'll break it down. But in my opinion, not necessarily a surprise. I think it kind of, to me, it was really two teams that neither side necessarily played all that great, Chris. Both sides made mistakes. South Carolina, scores early off of mistake, has a chance to maybe build some momentum and build a lead early on, then makes their own mistake. And then offense was sort of a combination of showing some of the positives we saw against Florida, but then also reverting back for stretches to kind of the results we've seen for most of the year. So, of course, we're going to dive into this game. Then at some point this week, we'll move forward to Auburn. This is GC Live and is presented by our good buddy, Clint Hammond of the Mortgage Network. There you see Clint's smiling face right there on your screen. See Hammond at mortgagenetwork.com. Several different ways you can contact Clint. His NMLS number is 71597. 803-576-4450 is one of the many phone numbers that you can use to contact Clint. And ClintHammond.com is the easiest way just to find some information about Clint. Again, I'm Wes. He's Chris. Chris, initial thoughts on this game?
Well, I think you nailed it there in your opening monologue, as I would call it. Opportunity for South Carolina, close game. To be transparent, because it's on the internet, I predicted a South Carolina win. Kind of begrudgingly is not the right word. Reluctantly, I think, is the right word, because, look, I think as well as this team played against Florida, Florida was part of that, we know. But South Carolina did take advantage. And so kind of the question that I think we all had going into this Missouri game was, has this South Carolina team turned the corner to where its actual identity, the production that it puts forth on the field, isn't more of what we saw against Florida? Did something click? Did they figure something out? And at least in terms of the result here, the answer is no, not yet. Maybe they've made some strides in certain areas. Certainly, I think you credit this team, Wes, for it was a pretty bleak outlook at the end of the game. They continued fighting. They made some plays, got a big interception, big fourth down, not only conversion, but touchdown late. And they were in this ball game late to where they could have come back and won. So we see that again. We see this team continue to fight. That's a positive, but there were too many mistakes in this game, ultimately. And it was a variety of things. There are actually a lot of storylines, Wes, coming out of this one. I think it's an interesting game because it's not just, well, the offense stinks, right? Like, that's what we've seen after a lot of the games. There are a lot of different letdowns and different storylines in this game. South Carolina's inability to stop Tyler Beatty. We harped on that all week leading up to this game. That was going to be a key to this game. This guy's a really good player. South Carolina couldn't hem him in, especially late. You had an opportunity to get off the field, maybe get your offensive ball back. Couldn't stop Tyler Beatty. Certainly the offensive line had its struggles. The run game couldn't get going. Jason Brown, I think on the road, we saw that there were some really good plays, and there were others that he would certainly like to have back. We spoke with him earlier today on our Garnet Trust sponsored interview, Wes. we'll talk about a little bit later, I'm sure, but some plays he'd like to have back. You give up a defensive score. Shane Beamer often says, if you score on defense in a game, it's hard to win. We saw that. We saw South Carolina with a chance to go up 14-0 deep in Missouri territory, 20, 25-yard line, turn the football over. And so those types of things in these low-margin games are hard to overcome. And credit to South Carolina for continuing to fight despite that, but came up just short. Too many mistakes, in this one, Wes.
Yeah, so Chris, shout out to everybody that's already here on our Primal Gourmet chat line. Comment from Nick on Facebook. All the things that went right against Florida were all gone against Missouri, and you certainly did get a sense that the opportunity to maybe once again build some of that momentum early in the game, much like they did against Florida, was there. And you go up 14-0 potentially. It doesn't guarantee you're going to win the game by any means, but does it open up maybe a few more throws from Missouri? Maybe they feel a little bit more pressure. They're not going to abandon the run, but do they feel a little bit more pressure to put the ball in danger? Does it put South Carolina in a better situation? Absolutely. It's felt like that changed the momentum of the game when South Carolina fumbled after having an opportunity to basically go up by 2 scores. And then it sort of settled into a little bit of a field position type game for a while. And, I thought, man, just the sort of just the sloppiness for me overall, like that's the best word I can come up with, because it wasn't that any phase that they were just awful in my opinion. But it wasn't really that any phase of the game was completely that sharp either. Offensively, this wasn't a game where the running game was completely bottled up, like, say, the A&M game where South Carolina just could not run the football at all. And people maybe running out of the road right now, cussed me out by saying that. But I didn't think that the running game was completely shut down. If you look at the numbers and take out the sack yardage, and I had to, y'all bear with me, I had to close my screen because it was trying to play a video where I had the stats up because I was going to reference it. But, Zaquandre White, you look at his numbers, 10 carries for 60 yards. Now, there's some of those are on splash plays. Some of those, a big portion of that is on a long run on a 3rd and long that he ended up breaking. And actually, that play alone flipped the field position for South Carolina at one point. Looked like it might end up being a huge play. And, you take out the 50 yards overall that were lost due to sacks. The numbers in the running game aren't completely as off. Not that they were good, not saying that at all. I'm just saying this wasn't a game where South Carolina just had no ability to run the football. I thought early on, I was like, okay, they're grinding out some rushing yardage here. They're going to be able to continue to run the football, in my opinion. Now, as sort of the middle portion of the game hit, that's when South Carolina, Chris, I felt like, you had the nice drive, sort of late in the second quarter. The beautiful throw from Brown to Van, where he rolled and then dropped it down in the bucket. That was a great play. That was a great drive. But for the most part, the middle 2 quarters, just not a whole lot going on for the offense in general, really in running game, throwing game, or any aspect at that point.
Yeah, and Colin Taylor had actually a piece, Wes, dedicated to how right after the game of how those middle quarters, you could call it the middle 8. If it was a little bit more, a little bit less than that, have to go back and kind of look at the clock and the game and everything. But basically, it's still up on Gamecock Central. Middle quarters, doomed Gamecocks and road loss. That puts it very well. Second and third quarters, Wes, South Carolina outscored 24-7. So there's your 17-point margin that South Carolina ended up being down. They have to come back, end up losing by 3. They were outgained in that point 247-80. Missouri rushed for 83 yards, threw for 164 in that period. It's South Carolina's rushing total at that point minus 14 yards, not sack adjusted, right? But in that period, there was obviously the strip sack for a touchdown. So, yeah, I mean, I think Nick put it very well there in terms of just how many things went wrong, right? Jason Brown had some really good plays that kind of encapsulated what he can bring to the offense. That throw to Josh Vann that you referenced, that was one of them. He also had some that you would certainly like to have back, not sensing that pressure off the right side. I think he attributed it after the game to a formational issue that he should have changed or been more aware of. Fumbles the ball. You have the one I referenced earlier where you're down there on the 20-25, you end up fumbling on an exchange. That gives Missouri the ball back. And now instead of, even if you get a field goal there, Wes, 10-0 game. Really the way you're moving the ball maybe is 14-0. On the Primal Gourmet chat line, Craig says, this is a good point. Going up 14-0 doesn't help us tackle Beatty the rest of the game, but what it does do, it gives you a little bit of a cushion. This ends up being a 3-point game, And the whole complexion of that game probably changes, to your point earlier, Wes. So I think you're up 14-0. You're feeling pretty good, especially since you've already turned the ball over once to that point. That's the thing about this game is that, I keep throwing out the low margin phrase, but this is a 3-point game. The storyline coming out is how poorly South Carolina played in this game on defense, even on special teams. They give up Shane Beamer visibly annoyed. They give up a longer kind of return, right, on one of the kickoffs. Not a huge play, but they give up a return. And then, offensively, you've got turnovers, multiple turnovers. You have a scoop and score for the defense. You have sacks. You're not running the ball well, and you lose by 3. So cut out any one of those errors, and you might play poorly and still win this football game on the road. So it just illustrates how devastating some of these, all piled together, these mistakes. They were devastating in this game.
Yeah, I'm about to throw a few more of those mistakes in there, but I will say this. Missouri was equally mistake prone is the thing. It was not it was not a clean game. It's not a well played game on either side, in my opinion. Missouri kept shooting themselves in the foot with penalties that should, there were several times Missouri's going to get the ball back either via a turnover that got overturned because of a penalty, or, South Carolina's backed up at their own 2. Missouri gets an illegal hands to the face call, a couple of holding calls on their defenders. I mean, both sides, it was just not a clean game. I don't know what Bazelak is doing, throwing the ball up over the middle in the fourth quarter when you have a 2-score lead. Missouri lost their first fumble of the entire season. Both sides are probably looking. Nobody enjoyed that film session on Sunday, in my opinion. But man, I like to think of football in sequences, and to just illustrate how little things hurt you, man. I mean, look, so just even field position in a game. South Carolina has a chance to get off the field in the second half. They're down by 3. Missouri is backed up towards their own goal line, and there's a 3rd and 6. They complete the ball on a swing pass. It's either a swing pass or a little quick out. Either way, it's to their running back. It's to Beatty in the flat. South Carolina's in man coverage. South Carolina has a defender there. South Carolina has the defender with his arms around Beatty. Beatty breaks the tackle, gets a first down, extends the drive. Missouri gets another first down or 2, whatever. Okay, no big deal. Nobody's even remembering that play because South Carolina gets off the field. But the ensuing drive, South Carolina is now backed up, and that drive is when the sack, fumble, scoop, and score happens. So that sequence, does it play out differently? Do you have a different play call if you have the ball at midfield? You know what I mean? Like the game plays out differently. Like little in this margin for error thing, little things like that can be the difference in winning or losing. The end of the half situation for South Carolina, when South Carolina has the ball. They're at about the 50-yard line. And there's there's between 2 and 3 minutes left. And then and it wasn't necessarily, generally I say if you have the ball less than 3 minutes to go, you're driving, either you should score or nobody should score, right? Like you have control at that point, and it's a 14-14 game. Well, and it wasn't that most of the time if you end up on the wrong side of that, it's because maybe there was a clock management error or something along the way. That was not the case here. The issue was South Carolina started going backwards again. I think there was a holding call in there maybe. Then there was a huge sack that dropped them all the way back to the 35, around the 35-yard line. Remember, it was like 4th and 30-something at that point.
Yeah.
South Carolina punts the ball back. Then Missouri has the little jet sweep pass, whatever you call it. And that play can go for 15 yards. That play can go for 20 yards. Is a coach happy? No. But you're fine. You got to get the guy on the ground. That play can't go for 70 or whatever it was before he got dragged down. Then they're in field goal range. Then you actually managed to get the guy down, which was a beautiful play on that throwback pass from Missouri. Ideally, though, you're going to just lay on him, right? Like, you're going to make them call a defensive. I'd force the referee's hand. I'd make him call a defensive delay a game on me. Lay on him, trip him, keep him from getting to the sideline.
Yeah.
And Missouri somehow gets the field goal off to get the 3 at the end of the half, which all the little things that had to happen for them to even be able to get that off. And it ends up being a 3-point game in the end. I mean, I'm sitting here wondering why, like you're supposed to be allowed to sub, right?
Well, that was a big part of the conversation. And Wes, I don't know about you. I haven't gotten any clarification on it.
I have not either.
Yeah. We gotta do some checking there. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, that's a big 3 points. It ends up being a big 3 points in this game. I mean, it's tied at that point, but you're right. It was a sequence of bad events that led to it. South Carolina starts out at their own 48-yard line. You're in good shape at that time. But your first run is a loss of 6. Then you end up getting a 17-yard gain to Josh Vanson. Now you're really in business. You're in Missouri territory. But you get a holding, you get an incomplete, you get a no gain, and then you take a sack, and then your 4th and 33 is what it ends up being. You're still at your own 36, so you got a chance to get off a good punt. As it was, Kai Kroger, not his best punt, so Missouri's now at their own 29. So that's one thing you think of, ideally in that situation. The clock is at 120, I think, ish at that time. You want to have them pin deeper than their own 29. They start at their 29. Very first play, 47-yard pass, right? 3rd and 10 at the SC 24. Complete pass. They end up making some plays, right? But
that complete pass, though, was the jet sweep.
That's the jet sweep.
It counts as a pass, but
yeah, it's the jet
really
sweep.
That's a run defense issue,
right?
In my opinion.
Right. So, I mean, it was just a variety of things that led to that. And I think we saw that this whole game. I mean, you just laid out that scenario. You laid out the one before, where you end up having the scoop and score issue. We laid out the one earlier where you're about to go score. You're going to, with Parker White on your team, you're at least going to get 3 with where you are. You may get 7. Instead, you come away with 0, right? And so those are the types of things you just can't do against a team that you're pretty evenly matched with on the road.
I would say very evenly matched with, but I still think if those teams play 10 times, I think they probably split, honestly. Depending on where they're playing, home field advantage probably means something. But yeah, Beatty was great for them. They just rode him, man. I think that probably, I don't want to say it's the most disappointing thing for a Carolina fan listening, but one of the most disappointing things has got to be that South Carolina could not get the ball back at the end of the game. Because generally, Chris, you see when teams know without a shadow of a doubt that the opponent is going to run the football, and they just sort of, basically when the ball snapped, everybody just heads towards the backfield. Lots of times you see teams get a stop in that situation. And in this case, it wasn't like Missouri took over with 1:30 to go, and you had to have, I always look at it as like a sequence of downs. Like, okay, sometimes when a team takes over, you have to have the stop in the first sequence of downs. So the pressure is on you as a defense. The play has to be now. You're 1 first down away from losing the game. This was a situation where South Carolina still had 2 timeouts, which, by the way, you would have had 3 timeouts if not for another issue of sloppiness. We'll just call all this being sloppy, where you had to burn the timeout on a 4th down prior. You had to burn the timeout on offense.
Yep.
So you would have had 3, but you had 2.
Yeah.
Shane Beamer, not happy.
Very unhappy.
At all. So if you're a lip reader, yeah. But I think you look, man, I don't remember the exact amount of time that was left, but you had several sequences to get off the field. And what happens? Basically, they're still getting chunk yardage. So you're still given, 2nd and 3 on one of those sequences. It's like, that's not a recipe to get off the field if they're running the football. The key play now was the zone read keeper or designed keeper from the quarterback, because Missouri, once again, both teams shooting themselves in the foot, they get a holding to push it back to 2nd and long, and then you're like, okay, South Carolina's going to find a way to get off the field. And great call by them, give them credit. Quarterback picks up about 10 yards, stays in bounds, makes it more manageable on 3rd down. They end up getting the 1st down. But that, to me, when you know 100% the other team is running the football and they're still not just able to run it, but run it well, like really well, that's not good.
No, it wasn't. I mean, that was a very frustrating thing for the Gamecocks, no doubt. And that was, honestly, Wes, probably my most significant takeaway from the game. We've seen, and I don't want to give the impression that we haven't seen any issues stopping the run this season. We have. We've talked about those on this show. We talked about after the Troy game how, hey, they struggled with some runs here against Troy. Now, and then we were talking about how, hey, you're going to see some of these same runs against Florida. They largely were able to stop those. But that was honestly one of my biggest takeaways in those moments where you knew Tyler Beatty was getting the ball. You couldn't get the stop. There were some missed tackle, missed angle issues. Wes, I looked up the PFF stats. Again, that's a resource we use as PFF at times for different things, just as a reference point. The missed tackle number a lot lower than I thought it was after I watched. I think they had Carolina down for 6, which is actually a really good number. If you have 6 missed tackles in a game, that's good. I know people are, oh, you shouldn't miss any tackles. You're going to miss some tackles in most games. That number seemed a lot higher to me. I don't really know how they chart that, how they measure it. I think what was even more than the actual numbers, the ones that they had were really glaring. Like the one you mentioned earlier, you've got arms on Beatty, basically in the back, not in the backfield. He's on the perimeter there, but it's basically no gain. He gets around. You look at the jet sweep, you got some bad angles and stuff like that there. That was a surprising stat to me, but that was a big issue in the game. I think there was some legitimate concerns about Beatty going in. I think it was kind of the worst case scenario for South Carolina in terms of how well, or really in this case, how poorly they were able to defend that.
Yeah, it couldn't have gone much worse, really. I mean, I guess it could have, but in reality, it went about. And they rode him like he's not a big back by any means, but between all the carries and as many times as they threw it to him, what did he have? I mean, they had 46 total carries in the game, and one of those is the sack early on by Damani. So 45 carries, and Beatty had 34 of them, plus he caught 5 passes. I mean, this dude was their workhorse, and they, give them credit. They said, look, he's our best player. We're going to give him the ball, and we're just going to ride him. We're going to give him the football and see how far he can take us. And I think Missouri's not a great football team, y'all. Like, to me, they're not. They're just not. But they kind of knew. I think they kind of knew what they are. They know they're not a great team at stopping the run. So there were several times that they were us playing NCAA football back in the day on PlayStation or Xbox, when teams are just running it down your throat and you just say, I'm going to call the double A-gap blitz every time, and you just play man coverage on the outside, and you just say, if you beat me, you beat me, but I'm sending everybody I got. And to me, that's what it felt like at times. Missouri was bringing lots of defenders, and they overloaded South Carolina at times. They scouted South Carolina pretty well, I think, as far as, Jason Brown. We talked about this. Teams all of a sudden having just 1 week of film on you. They got some knowledge on you. And for those who missed it, please go back and watch our interview with Jason, our exclusive earlier today, brought to you by Garnet Trust. We're going to tell y'all a little bit about what Garnet Trust is here in a minute. But Chris, when you're doing those interviews, you don't want to go too deep into pointing out, Jason Brown knows there were some plays he would want back. Try to be respectful, but he brought it up. He brought it up himself.
He did.
The fact that everybody saw that big play he threw to Van. There were several of them against Florida. Everybody saw the back twist, like the backside spin move. And I was debating on if I was going to ask him about that or not. He brought it up. He said I relied on it a little too much. He even mentioned that one of the Missouri guys was rushing to that area, like sort of anticipating it. Now, we saw the kids step up in the pocket several times against Florida and, play well in that aspect of his game. So certainly is capable of doing that. I'm not going to sit here and by any means say this offensive line played great, but there were times where the O-line, if you were just watching the game, having some drinks with your friends, you're not really watching a slow motion replay or really looking at where the pressure came from, where it wasn't all on the offensive line. And you've heard Beamer say that, and you're probably tired of hearing, it's not just on the O-line. But here's why. Some of them were. The play, the first fumble on the little exchange, Jason nor Marshawn really had any chance on that play because the defender got such a good jump off the edge and beat South Carolina's left tackle. That's what happened. But other times, they were being set up where there were more blitzers than there are blockers. And then other times the angles, if you drop back far enough, I believe Missouri's scouting was that, okay, let's just get as wide as possible. And if he spins out, we're there. I'm convinced that was by design that they did that. I also, Chris, think the implementation of a fullback is outstanding, especially in short yardage. The Trey Jones package, when teams know you're going to run the ball anyway. Now they use Jaheim as a fullback at times. They use Kevin Harris as a fullback at times with Juju as the tailback. But Chris, there were also occasions, and do you remember the snap count on Trey Jones?
I will effort it. I do not recall it.
Okay,
let me look that up real quick.
It hit me now. I rewatched the game on Sunday, and it hit me, Chris, when you're in that formation, even with a regular fullback, they know the fullback is probably a blocker, but from a number standpoint, when they count out who they have to cover, who they have to guard, they have to account for the fullback if they're in man coverage. If it's Trey Jones and it's an offensive lineman, you essentially can always blitz that guy. Like you can because Trey Jones is not going out for a pass. So it does give you an extra blocker, but it probably gives you an extra defender to deal with as well. So to me, I'm wondering if Missouri, do you have that number, by the way?
According to what we got via PFF, just 4 snaps. Thought it was a little more than that, but
it seemed to me like when Missouri saw Trey that they were like, okay, send everybody, because you know that's probably going to be a run. So you just completely sell out in that case. But let's see, we got a couple of questions here, man. And you know what? I mean, Travis, I love you, man, but I can't sit here and say the O-line is not the problem. It's part of the problem.
It's A. Yeah. A.
It's A. Yeah, like and let's see another comment. We can't watch the O-line manhandle Florida when we had a completely different mindset and think they aren't capable of getting it done. You know, I agree. And that was a great job by the O-line against Florida. Also, at some point now, did South Carolina break Florida, or was Florida broken before this game? You'd like to think South Carolina had something to do with it, you know, the way that game played out. And I'm not going to be that guy that's like, oh, well, that game meant nothing now. But I think South Carolina deserves all the credit for burying Florida when the opportunity was there. So we're not going to take that back just because Florida played poorly against Samford. I'm not going to be that guy. But I do think, you know, there's plenty of blame to go around is all I'm saying. At times, it is play calling. At times, it is just straight up the O-line. At times, it's that, you know, Jason wasn't able to step up into the pocket. At other times, it's just little, like we've talked about all year, man. It's little attention to detail things. 3rd and 1, I'm thinking of a 3rd and 1 late in the game. Your wide receiver is not lined up and set. You're going to get the first down on the 3rd and 1. Instead, you get pushed back. Now you're at 3rd and 6. You don't convert the 3rd and 6. Now you're at 4th and 6. You have to go for it because you're down 17, and now Missouri has the ball back. There was another occasion on a short yardage, I think, where South Carolina, there was a, you know, I don't know if it was short yardage. I do remember there was another illegal formation call, and I was like, what did South Carolina do? I went back and I counted. They didn't have 7 guys on the line of scrimmage. So stuff like that is attention to detail. Stuff like that sometimes is a common theme we've talked about all year long. Are you trying to do too much? Are you trying to be a jack of all trades, but you're not able to consistently have that attention to detail that you need to execute?
Yeah. I mean, that's been a huge issue. Some of those same things that we'd seen this season, as far as the turnovers, untimely penalties. I mean, they reared their ugly head. Going back to your point about the offensive line play, I think it was just kind of the imperfect storm for South Carolina, because we did see some one-on-one losses by the O-line. We did see them get overloaded, which then you can go, okay, is that's a schematic thing sometimes. Sometimes you got to have an answer for it schematically. There are times when you're playing this level of competition, you're going to get guys overload you. You have to have a schematic answer for it, or an execution answer for it. And look, that was, to me, that was one of the bigger surprises in the game. We knew Jason Brown, with his playing style, Wes, he's going to take some risks. He's going to move around. Like, that's part of the experience. That's what he's going to do. But look at his best play in that game, in my opinion, was that touchdown throw to Josh Vann. And what did he do on that play? He bought some time. He stepped up, went to his right. He threw on the run and threw a gorgeous pass. I mean, he about handed it to Josh Vann from that distance. But we didn't see that most of the game. And so I think the amount of pressure that Missouri had, how wide they were getting, some of the one-on-one losses, as a quarterback, a lot of former quarterbacks will tell you this, you could start seeing ghosts a little bit. And I think it did affect him. A lot of people have talked about the deep drops. There were some very deep drops in this game. You're already in shotgun. You end up backing up. You see the pressure. Now you're spinning out. Now you're losing more yardage. You're losing more ground. And so I can't sit here and say, well, he didn't step up because of this or because of this, but it didn't happen. And so that's certainly something in our Garnet Trust interview with Jason. You're right, Wes. He brought that up himself in terms of the spin out. I asked him, the question I asked was, when you look at the Florida game and the Missouri game, with the good and the bad, what are some things that you're working on that you think these next two opportunities, what are some things that are going to be a point of emphasis? He said, I used the spin out too much. That's basically what he said. And so they're aware of it. Why they couldn't correct it in the game, I mean, I don't know, right? But going forward, that does have to be a point of emphasis, because there were Jason Brown shown in the Florida game, very limited sample of the Missouri game. When he's navigating that pocket and stepping up, he can do some really good things. So not going backwards in the pocket is going to have to be, a significant part of this.
So somebody made the comment asking, or they commented and said, I heard that there were 7 missed tackles or broken tackles, like missed tackles created, and that 6 were by Z White. According to PFF, yes, that is correct. So, did you need to go off camera, Chris, or did I just accidentally take you off?
That was me, because I was going to sneeze, and none of the people need to see that.
Okay, I got you. I thought I had accidentally.
Wes, your mic has become disconnected, is what the show just told me. You're talking, you're not muted. It said you're muted, then you were not, and now your mic is disconnected. So anyway, I'm going to take this opportunity while Wes reconnects his mic, and we're going to tell you about the fine folks at Dead Soxy. Here it is up on the screen for those of you on the live stream. DeadSoxy.com, DeadSoxy.com. Wore my Dead Soxy socks to church this weekend. In there, it was a fantastic experience as usual. Go there, check out the promo code COCKY, COCKY. Get 25% off your entire order at DeadSoxy.com. They have a great catalog there. Great folks. Check out DeadSoxy.com. Wes, yes?
Am I back? Am I in? Am I here?
You're here. You're back with us. The people are excited about Dead Soxy. Oh, look at this on the Primal Gourmet chat. Wow, Randy. Whew.
Randy throwing shade over here.
Coming in hot on the Primal Gourmet chat line. No, I'm sorry. So the mic disconnection got me all flustered, Wes. I'm not sure what we were talking about. We were talking about Jason Brown in and out of the pocket, and then we moved on to something else. But
we moved on to Z White breaking 6 of the 7 tackles, I believe, is where we were at.
Wow.
Dude, Z White, and you know what? Why have we not heard from the guy who was convinced that we're Z White haters. Haven't heard from him in a minute.
Went back and watched some of our old shows where we talking about how good he is, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah, I do feel a little like, honestly, early on, I was driving the Z White hype train out of JUCO. And then last year I was like, what, maybe, he wasn't playing a lot. I was like, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was wrong. And I do feel a little vindicated. Like this kid's good, man. I'm telling y'all, this has the feeling to me, like just watching Zaquandre White's running style. I think this kid could be one of those guys, if he finds the right spot in the NFL, that could end up having, and somebody asked earlier, by the way, if Z White has another year. He does have another year if he wants it. Now, ultimately, I could see him being one of those guys that actually ends up having a better NFL career than a college career at this point. Now, you certainly hope that he ends up having a big splash to his college career and is able to get drafted and stuff like that. But just his run, the patience that he has started to run with, I think at times when he first got here, he would just shoot up in there. He's actually benefited a little bit from having to play behind a line that hasn't always given him a lot of room, and that he's gotten more patient. That the touchdown run, the short touchdown run where he just waited, looked kind of like a in his prime. It was in the style of the in his prime Le'Veon Bell. Not saying he is that back, but that just patient, like let me feel, and then let me go. To me, Z White deserve like the stretch where he wasn't playing a whole lot. Like you look back, the offense might be at his best when 11 is on the field, is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, and he's got that patience that he's really improved on, coupled with what we already knew, and that he can run. He's going to run hard. He can break tackles, right? Like he's got some speed. He had one of the greatest 1 yard runs I've ever seen in that Missouri game. It was some kind of perimeter run.
He had a couple of those, I feel like.
A couple of, I mean, there's one in particular. I mean, he had guys all over.
About,
and he just somehow got forward and got a yard, a half yard. I mean, just an amazing effort. You look at the fourth down, pass he got, just he was wide open, but just how hard he runs. Like I said last week, he runs like his hair and his rear end are both on fire. Like he's running from something, and so he's coupled those open field skills with being more patient at the line. So it's really been something to see. Got to try to get the ball in his hands even more, right? And scheme up some ways to get the ball in the hands of guys like him and Jaheim and Juju McDowell. Get Marshawn Lloyd can do some things, when he gets in the open field. Kevin Harris is a physical back. They just haven't been able to put those elements together, and so I think that's been a large part of the frustration, for people this year, is seeing these players that have open field ability, or even before they get in the open field ability, but not being able to get those guys to football consistently, not being able to get them going consistently. And that's been one of the toughest things, I think, for this offense this season.
Well, how about the catch and run for Jaheim Bell, where the Missouri defender comes flying up, has the momentum, and he just bounced right off of zero. I mean, bounced completely backwards. Like that was nasty. I mean, even the touchdown against Florida for Jaheim Bell, where he made the kid miss in the open field 1-on-1. That was as smooth of a yeah, just keep going, man. I'm going to the end zone. Like it was like he wasn't even trying,
Excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah, excuse me, dude. Like, what are you doing in the way? Like I'm going right, you go right. Let's avoid each other and let's go. So yeah, there are players on this team. It's not completely devoid of talent. And like you said, man, there were moments in the game where you were like, okay, it looks a little bit like it did against Florida. There were moments where you said, okay, this looks like it did against Texas A&M. It's like progress has been there, but probably not enough. It is interesting, by the way, going by PFF numbers again. Gap scheme versus zone scheme this week, dead even, 50-50, half zone, half gap. It was a little more 2/3-ish gap scheme against Florida. So I don't know. A lot more shotgun against Florida. There was a lot more under center this week, which I assumed most of the shotgun against Florida was because Jason Brown has played in a shotgun-based offense for his entire time at St. Francis. Was that a safe assumption? Like, isn't that what you would have thought?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think going into this year, it seemed like Marcus Satterfield has said this, and he was really talking about Luke Doty with it. He envisioned them doing a lot more under center. They did not with Doty because he injured his foot. I mean, he's coming off foot injury, still not 100%, and so, maybe that's an effort to get back to that in kind of week 2 of the Jason Brown era. A common question, Wes, and one that I can't answer. I don't like when people ask me this, not because I mind answering. I don't. I just never have a good answer. So one of the questions that I've gotten on the Insiders Forum today is exactly what you said. Why so many zone runs, or why stick with zone runs? Similar. Why so many under center looks? The answer is basically always that's what the coaches thought would work. I mean, like I hate to give a cop-out answer. We can't really always get in their minds in terms of why they thought it would work. We can give our opinions on, well, they shouldn't have done that, or they should have done more of this. But to actually answer the question, that's what they thought would work. Did they see something specific in their scouting? Do they want this to be the identity and they're trying to kind of make it fit? Those are the things that I don't really know as much.
Yeah, me either, man. I don't know. Who knows? If you're not in the meeting, hard to say. Very, very hard to say. Some other news coming out. I guess that was official yesterday that Bo Nix is out. It had been rumored. Tough kid, by the way, man. Apparently he fought through it. This kid's been, he's had to deal with kind of the scrutiny and up and down career. By the way, Chris, what are you drinking, man? Are those athletic greens?
Is it what?
It looks like a green drink, athletic greens. That's like a somewhat popular thing right now.
They're not a sponsor, Wes. Don't mention them on here.
Is that a plain what's the word? Generic version of
a knockoff? Yeah. It is actually green tea.
Okay.
It's green tea, and which always, if I took the tea bag out, yeah, and this cup's very dirty.
It looks like greens, y'all.
So if I took the tea bag out, you could, maybe come up with a theory on what this is. It's only 3:00, but it is green tea.
Okay, all right. You lost me for a second.
What were we talking about?
Bo Nix is out. TJ Finley is in. South Carolina fans are having PTSD. So you have South Carolina versus Auburn in Williams-Brice Stadium, a place where the Gamecocks inexplicably knocked off Auburn this time last year, with a quarterback for Auburn who beat the Gamecocks last year while playing for LSU, playing for an offensive coordinator who called the plays for the Gamecocks last year while beating Auburn. Did I get that about right?
Yeah. Yeah, my head hurts. That's right. Very interesting.
Correct. Juvenile, man.
That's what it is. It is juvenile, but that's what it is. Dude, yeah, there's some storylines in this one, There's some storylines.
What do you think about the Bobo factor in this game? What do you think about the TJ Finley? I mean, Bo Nix was your starter for a reason, right? Carolina fans are scared of Finley, but LSU ran the ball like 38 times in a row, it felt like, to start that game last year.
Unofficial stat.
Yeah. But seriously, they just pounded Carolina's defense. So it wasn't really TJ Finley that smashed Carolina in that game.
Yeah. He did his job, and his job was not as difficult that day. The fact that they were running the football, there was basically zero pressure on him all night.
Better numbers than I remember. So shout
really
out Brandon
numbers
for Primal Gourmet line again. Good job, Brandon. Put us in our place.
They were
Great
good
numbers, but still. Chris Clark could have gone 14 for 21 with those easy throws.
Let's not go that far. I need to go back and
21
rewatch
those
that
easy
game.
throws.
Well, the interesting thing is, you asked the question, what about the Bobo factor? I don't know if you mean like the kind of emotional part of it or the kind of game planning part. Obviously, Auburn had that game on Saturday, Wes. They're what was it, 28-3? They're up, I think. They give up 40 straight points. Nix breaks his ankle. Rough performance. Tough. TD Moultrie, they're really good defensive lineman. He'll be down for the first half. He was ejected for targeting. Pretty questionable targeting call, as a lot of them are.
As most of them are.
He'll be out. But yeah, the thing about Bo Nix, we talk about the Jason Brown experience. Bo Nix is a whole experience at quarterback, right? Because he will give you he had a play earlier this year that broke my brain, as far as, I think it was in the LSU game. He scrambled like 100 yards around the field and threw a touchdown pass, and it was incredible. But he'll make some crazy plays as well in a negative sense. And he can run. He can do some things for you. So they will be on their backup quarterback. It's not like it's a guy that's never played. TJ Finley played against Georgia State this year when they were, down in that game at one point when Bo Nix got benched. He has experience. This is a different team. This is a different scheme. It is a big guy who's got arm talent. And I think it's going to be same deal. Running the football, that's going to be the biggest thing in this game. And we know Mike Bobo's going to try to get to it. They got Tank Bigsby. There's another storyline for you, Wes.
Release the Bigsby tape. Release the commitment tape.
That's right. So, there's a lot of interesting storylines, I think, ultimately. And I hate to be Mr. Boring, but it's going to be about football. That's what it's going to come down to. And so there's a lot of...
That's no fun, Chris.
I know. We'll talk about all the other stuff throughout the week. We can go reminisce on Tank Bigsby and Mike Bobo and TJ Finley. Nobody wants to reminisce on TJ Finley last year, probably.
No. I think a lot of people probably turn the show off when we mention TJ Finley. Or when I mention your Athletic Greens or whatever. That's probably when they turn it off. But it'll be, I don't know, dude. I kind of feel like this is going to be a close game. I haven't really had a chance to dive into Auburn yet, but it just kind of feels, Carolina's at home. Disappointing loss, but, Carolina's had its share of disappointing losses this year. For Auburn, though, that's kind of soul-crushing, I feel like.
Yeah.
Lose a game like that, lose your quarterback. Bama game, as Beckham pointed out, Bama game is next week. I don't know. I feel like it could be a tight game. I think it easily could be a tight game.
It'll be a weird game because Auburn's involved. They've never had a normal season. They've never had a normal game. I don't know what is in the water or whatever there. It's just a different place, and they have a lot of weird things happen, no doubt. So I'm looking forward to, and I'm in agreement with you, Wes. I do think this is a game that you go in and feel like it's winnable for South Carolina. Will I pick the Gamecocks? We'll have to stay tuned. Spoiler, I don't even know yet who I'm going to pick. Got a lot more to watch, a lot more digging in to do. But it is, I think, just first glance, I think it's a winnable game. And then you get the Tigers at home, get them without their quarterback, Anders Carlson, their excellent kicker. also down with an ACL injury. We'll see.
Daniel says for me not to predict 38 points. That was what, the Vanderbilt game that I predicted that. But okay, Daniel, didn't you win the Corey Smith tickets, buddy? If you emailed me, I was looking for it. I have not seen an email from you. So, actually, if you don't mind, you can throw your email in the chat. If you don't want your email in the chat, shoot me an email, wes@GamecockCentral.com. That concert is Friday at Segra Park, so I want to make sure that I can get them in the mail for you or get them to you somehow before Friday. Pretty sure Daniel won them, didn't he? I think that's right. So make sure to make sure to give me a way I can get in touch with you or DM me on Twitter or something. Anyway, Chris, do you want to tell everybody about what the Garnet Trust is? And by the way, maybe I'm a little bit biased because we just talked to JB and he was the first Garnet Trust interviewee and all this stuff. I just got a feeling, I think game one for him, like first start, was kind of like not beginner's luck by any means at all. But I feel like first start was kind of like they don't have much film on you. Then I feel like Missouri, they took the film that was there, they adjusted, they found some tendencies. Now you go into this game, it's Jason's turn to adjust. What do teams do to him? Auburn, I'm sure, will have watched Missouri's film. They will watch what they've done. Point being, I think Jason Brown, actually, when he hopped on the show before we went live, I was like, "What you doing, man?" He's like, "Watching Auburn." So this is his day off as far as football activities go. Nobody's required to do anything football wise, but he was watching Auburn tape. I got a feeling Jason Brown bounces back for a big game. Again, I might just be biased, Chris, but I think it's like anything. A guy makes his debut, the opponent adjusts, and then that guy has an opportunity to adjust as well. I just got a feeling JB's going to adjust and play well on Saturday. If you haven't already heard it or listened to it or watched it, go check out our Garnet Trust interview with Jason Brown. Chris, many people may be sitting there at home saying, what is the Garnet Trust? Why don't you answer that question?
Yeah, so Garnet Trust is a new organization that basically creates this mechanism where you, as a fan, can help create NIL opportunities for players, or if you're a business owner. We've heard from a lot of business owners and a lot of fans that want to participate in the NIL space. It's a whole new world in college athletics, but they don't know how. So go to GarnetTrust.com. GarnetTrust.com. There's a frequently asked questions. If you're a business owner, you can email us if you've got questions, and there's a way for fans to contribute. Supporters are going to help create content such as the Jason Brown interview. That's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. We'll be doing sponsored content like that, but you also get, as a supporter, you get access to a lot of cool exclusive stuff, text messages from players, newsletters that are going to feature players across all sports ultimately at South Carolina. So it's really a win-win-win. Awesome content, kind of some personal, I guess, kind of a personal touch from some of the players, and you get to help them legally and in a compliant fashion participate in the NIL space. If you're a business owner, Wes, no brainer, because you get to kind of tap in and use a player that you might be interested in having feature your product or services. We can help kind of guide you in how to do that. And you can use our platforms at GamecockCentral.com. So check out GarnetTrust.com to learn more and find out how to support.
You know, I think that's the coolest part, Chris, if you're a business owner, is that you can help get the word out about your business. You can help grow your brand while simultaneously directly supporting student athletes. If you're a Gamecock fan, you know, every Gamecock fan, I assume, wants to have a way to support the team, support the kids. And this is a way for you to kind of do both and then supercharge it by the fact that they're going to be on Gamecock Central's platforms, because Gamecock Central is the exclusive media arm of the Garnet Trust, which is pretty cool for us. By the way, I just checked, Daniel, that email either got blocked in spam or something. So if you don't mind, man, email me back. Like I said, I want to make sure you got the tickets. Give it one more try, man. I want to make sure I get them to you. All right, Chris, we got anything else, man?
No, man. Good show today. That's the hour mark. So
Yep.
looking forward to diving in more on Auburn this week.
Yeah, there was another question about Auburn. I honestly don't have many answers about them yet. We'll be diving in as the week goes on. Shane Beamer, of course, we'll talk tomorrow. Coordinators on Wednesday. We're actually probably going to have a couple of Auburn guests for you. I've got a couple of guys in mind for this week. So plenty of Auburn, South Carolina breakdowns throughout the week. For Chris, I'm Wes. Appreciate all of you joining us. Appreciate all of our sponsors. See you all on Tuesday.